Her friends mocked me at dinner, and she said it's my problem, so I left the bill behind. Hey guys, before we start today's video, I need your help. I have noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best way that you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. It all started on a Friday evening, the kind you look forward to after a stressful work week. I had been planning something nice for my girlfriend Melissa. We'd been dating for almost a year now, and though things weren't always smooth, I thought we were in a decent place. She suggested dinner with her friends, something I had avoided for a while, not because I didn't want to be involved, but because her friends had a certain energy about them. I'd met them twice before, and each time, I felt like I was being judged, ridiculed in subtle ways. Not overt insults, but the kind that come with smirks, fake compliments, and the occasional just joking after a dig. That felt too personal. But Melissa insisted this would be different. They want to know you better, she said with a smile. So, I agreed, thinking maybe I was being overly sensitive last time. We met at a fancy restaurant she picked, of those dimly lit, expensive fusion places downtown, where the water costs more than a fast food meal. Her friends were already seated when we arrived, 5 of them, dressed well, laughing loudly. Drawing glances from other tables, I recognized the core group: Anna, the sarcastic one who always had something to say about someone's job or outfit; Josh, who tried too hard to be funny; Lydia, who never made eye contact with me but had something to whisper in someone's ear every 5 minutes. The 2 new faces were more neutral, but it didn't take long before they adopted the same tone. I sat quietly at first, just taking it all in, hoping this would be a night of good food and maybe even a breakthrough, but right from the appetizers, it started. The little jabs that felt too pointed to ignore. Anna started with a snide comment about my job. "Oh, you're still in IT support? Must be fun answering old ladies' questions about printers all day." The table burst into laughter. I smiled politely, not wanting to make a scene. Melissa didn't say anything. She giggled too, then leaned over and said, "She's just teasing. Don't be so serious." I shrugged it off, but the comments didn't stop. When I ordered something off the cheaper end of the menu, Josh chimed in, "Saving up for your next Best Buy purchase." Again, laughter. It was like high school all over again. Every word I said was turned into a joke, every opinion challenged. With sarcasm, I looked at Melissa a few times, hoping she'd notice. She did, but her face remained neutral. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she rolled her eyes, but she never defended me. It was as if she was trying to stay cool in front of her friends, to not be the girlfriend who sides with the boyfriend. I drank my water slowly, pushing food around on my plate, waiting for the meal to end. The waiter came and asked if everything was all right, and before I could answer, Lydia said, "He's just shy. Don't worry, he's used to not being noticed." That one hurt. I chuckled softly, more out of disbelief than humor. Melissa just sipped her wine. No eye contact. Just an awkward silence before someone changed the topic to vacations. But even there, the jokes continued. When I mentioned wanting to visit Iceland one day, someone said, "Oh yeah, that suits your vibe. Cold, quiet, isolated." I looked at Melissa again. Still nothing. That's when I realized I was alone at this table. The final straw came when the check arrived. The waiter placed it discreetly between me and Melissa. Without missing a beat, Josh laughed and said, "Let's see if Prince Charming's got us covered tonight." Anna added, "Well, it's the least he can do after that performance." A few chuckled. Melissa looked at me and said the words that pushed me over the edge. "If you don't like their jokes, you can just pay and leave." I blinked, stunned. I asked her if she was serious. She nodded and smiled, almost challenging me. I sat there for a moment, trying to process what was happening. I wasn't expecting a grand defense from her, but at the very least, I had hoped for some acknowledgement of how uncomfortable I was, how cruel they were being. Instead, she sided with them, laughed with them, chose them, and then asked me to pay for it all. I looked at the bill. It was well over $300. Drinks, appetizers, main courses, and desserts. They had ordered without limits. I hadn't even eaten half my meal. Slowly, I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't create a scene. I took out a $20 from my wallet, placed it on the table, leaned toward Melissa, and whispered, "You deserve each other." Then I turned and walked away. The table fell silent. I could feel their eyes on my back, hear the awkward shuffle, the soft, nervous giggles, but I didn't turn around. I walked straight out the door, heart pounding but head clear. Outside, the cool air hit my face like a slap. I took a deep breath, letting it settle in. The weight of everything that had happened began to lift, not instantly but steadily. I called for a ride and stood under the streetlight, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city haze. My phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. Seriously, that was childish. I didn't respond. A minute later, another. Embarrassed me. Then one from Anna. "Next time, grow a backbone before you join adults." I blocked them both. I stared at the street ahead, realizing just how long I had tolerated disrespect disguised as humor, how I had excused cruelty for sarcasm, all in the name of trying to fit into her world. But in truth, I never fit. I was tolerated, not accepted. And the person I cared about the most stood by and let it happen. Over and over again. The ride came, and as I sat in the back seat, I thought about all the little moments I had ignored. When she rolled her eyes at me in front of her friends, when she laughed louder at their jokes than mine, when she dismissed my concerns as it wasn't just about one dinner, it was about a pattern. A pattern I had been too blind or too hopeful to acknowledge. But tonight made it all clear. I got home and sat in the dark for a while, letting silence replace the ringing in my ears. The silence was comforting. No laughter at my expense. No sideways glances or whispered jokes. Just quiet. I didn't cry, but I felt something like grief for the time wasted. The dignity I let slip. The version of me that tolerated such treatment. I opened my phone again and scrolled through old messages from Melissa. In the beginning, she had been different, or maybe I had convinced myself she was. She was warm, affectionate, curious about my life. She'd call me on her breaks, send me good morning messages, ask me to explain things about my job that she didn't understand. But as time went on, and our lives merged socially, she began to shift. Or maybe she just revealed who she always was. Either way, I remembered how I'd always feel a twinge of anxiety before going to gatherings with her friends. How she'd often say things like, "Just don't be so quiet," or "Try to be more fun this time." I always took it as advice. But now I saw it for what it was, a warning that I needed to perform to be accepted. And if I didn't, I'd be the punchline. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I didn't check my phone. I went for a walk instead, watched the sunrise, grabbed a coffee, and let the peace sink in. Of course, when I did check my phone, it was a storm. Missed calls, texts, even voicemails. Some were from mutual acquaintances asking what had happened. Others were directly from Melissa, swinging between anger and guilt. "I can't believe you left like that," one read. Then, they were just teasing. "You took it way too personally." Followed by, "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." And then finally, "I can't believe you think walking out like that was mature." I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't need to. Sometimes, silence says more than explanations ever could. I began unfollowing people that were part of her circle, one by one. I deleted our photos. Not out of spite, but clarity. I didn't want to look back and remember a lie dressed up as love. I knew the breakup was inevitable now. Even if she apologized, which she didn't at the time, it would only be because her pride was wounded. Not because she truly saw how cruel it was to laugh along while I was ridiculed. Not because she understood what it meant to stand up for someone you care about. And without that understanding, what kind of future could we possibly have? The following week, I focused on myself. Work was steady, my team was supportive, and I found myself talking to a few coworkers more than usual. It felt good to be surrounded by people who saw value in my presence, who listened when I spoke and laughed with me, not at me. One afternoon, I told a few of them about the dinner incident, not in bitterness, but almost like telling a cautionary tale. They were appalled, supportive, and one of them, a quiet analyst named Priya, even said, "You deserve so much better. That's not how grown adults treat anyone, let alone someone they call a partner." Her words stayed with me. For the first time, I didn't feel crazy for feeling hurt. I felt validated, empowered, free. That evening, Melissa texted again. This time, it was different. "I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have said something. I didn't realize how bad it was, but even that felt hollow. Too little, too late." Because apologies aren't just about saying, "I was wrong." They're about actions. And in that moment when it mattered most, she made a choice. And I made mine. Days turned into weeks. Melissa and I officially broke up, though there was no dramatic argument or dramatic closure. Just a final message from her. "I guess this is it then." And I replied, "It already was." And that was that. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. But more than anything, I felt grateful for the clarity, for the courage I found in that moment, and for the quiet strength that grew inside me afterward. My life didn't magically change overnight, but something shifted. I became more assertive, more protective of my space and energy. I started seeing patterns in other areas of life, how often we tolerate things just to keep the peace, just to avoid conflict, just to be liked, and how much damage that causes in the long run. I stopped showing up to places where I felt unseen. I started seeking out people who made space for others, and slowly, the world became kinder. Or maybe I just stopped watering the parts that were toxic. The first time I saw Melissa, after everything, it was completely unexpected. I was at a bookstore cafe, something I'd started doing weekly just for myself. I'd pick a corner seat, get my coffee, browse a few titles, and enjoy the peace. That particular afternoon, as I turned a page of a memoir I'd picked up, I heard her voice behind me. She was with Anna and Lydia. They hadn't seen me yet. They walked past, laughing, drinks in hand, still radiating that energy I had grown to resent. I stayed seated, pulling my hoodie slightly forward, not out of fear or shame, but because I wanted to stay invisible to them. I listened for a moment, just long enough to hear the familiar tones of forced humor, performative banter, and underhanded sarcasm. It reminded me why I had left. It reminded me what it felt like to be in their orbit. And for the first time, instead of anger or sadness, I felt nothing. No emotional pull, no old desire, no bitterness, just distance. Healthy, solid distance. I paid for my book, walked out the door, and never looked back. That moment, that quiet bookstore table, gave me a kind of closure words never could. One day I received a message from Josh, unexpected and unusually serious in tone. Hey, just wanted to say, maybe we were too hard on you. I guess we didn't. Realize you weren't playing along. Melissa told us you took it pretty badly. Hope you're doing okay. It was brief, stiff, and too late, but oddly satisfying. I didn't reply. I didn't feel the need to. I was no longer the same person who had silently absorbed their cruelty. The version of me that had sat through that dinner, biting my tongue and hoping for kindness, no longer existed. In his place was someone who had found peace in solitude, confidence in honesty, and strength in walking away. That dinner had felt like a betrayal, but now I saw it as a gift. Because of it, I learned what kind of love I would never accept again. I learned that love without respect is just dependency, that laughter without warmth is just noise, and that, if someone can watch you be disrespected and laugh along, they are not your ally, no matter what label they carry. Months passed. Life went on. I traveled for work, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating again casually at first. Then, with more interest, one person stood out. Her name was Ava. She was kind in a quiet way, not overly expressive but deeply attentive. On our third date, she noticed I hesitated to talk about my past relationships. She didn't push. She just said, "Take your time, when you're ready," and that was the moment I knew I was ready for something real. We built something slowly, rooted in conversation, respect, mutual curiosity. There were no sharp jokes, no backhanded compliments, no emotional games, just genuine presence. With her, I never had to shrink. I never had to explain why a joke hurt or why silence mattered. And the most surprising thing, she laughed at my jokes, not the loud, performative kind of laughter, but the sincere kind, the one that warms a room. It was everything I didn't know I needed. One night, as we were walking through a local art fair, Ava asked me what made me finally leave that past relationship. I told her the dinner story. She listened intently, not interrupting, just holding my hand a little tighter. When I finished, she said, "I'm proud of you. Not everyone walks away from that kind of disrespect. Most people try to change themselves, to fit in." Her words echoed in my mind long after the night ended. I realized then how powerful one act of self-respect can be. How one moment standing up, walking out, refusing to be the butt of the joke can rewrite the narrative of your entire life. That dinner wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the beginning of and I wouldn't trade that moment of clarity for anything. Eventually, the memory of that night dulled. Not because I forgot, but because it no longer held power over me. It became a chapter in a story I was proud of. A story where the protagonists meet self-respect over validation, silence over conflict, dignity over belonging. Melissa became a footnote. Her friends' background characters. The real plot was about the man who sat at that table, endured the insults, reached a limit, and left. That man became the foundation for who I am now. Confident, clear, unapologetic. I often thought about others who might be sitting through similar dinners, biting their tongues, shrinking themselves for the sake of someone else's approval. I wanted to tell them, don't leave. It's not weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. Years later, I was asked to give a talk at a corporate retreat for young professionals. The topic was supposed to be about communication and resilience in the workplace. But halfway through my talk, I shared the dinner story. Not the names, not the drama, just the essence. About how disrespect in any form should never be tolerated. About how the little things, jokes, comments, silence speak volumes. The room was quiet when I finished. One person came up afterward and said, "I needed to hear that. I've been staying silent too long." That made it all worth it. That dinner became a story I shared not with shame, but with purpose. A reminder that we're all allowed to choose how we are treated. That walking away is a valid, powerful option now. Whenever I sit down at a dinner table with friends, with family, with someone I love, carry that clarity with me. I listen, I laugh, I engage, but I never forget the lesson. Any table where I am not respected is not a table I belong at. And more importantly, I trust myself to recognize it, to stand up, to walk away, to leave the bill behind if I must. Because dignity is never too expensive, and silence in the face of cruelty is complicity. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it, and that has made all the difference.